Hello everyone, back into today's second video. Going to have a look at the weather for next week to 10 days for today's second video. This will take us to around the 3rd of December. So we're pretty cold at the moment. We're going to be staying cold and grey over the weekend and into the start of next week as well. By the middle of next week, we are seeing signs of a change as low pressure moves in from off the Atlantic, brings a milder, wetter and windier phase of weather. And we will have a look at weather next week to 10 days, which takes us through the first week or so of December very shortly. Just say that JMA Friday has been released. That's your month-end look ahead. And again, we are sort of picking up this change in the more extended output as well, from the colder conditions that we've got at the moment to something rather milder, wetter and windier perhaps as we go through the first week or so of December. JMA itself is hinting at the chance of building high pressure back to the north again by the middle of December. So possibly signs that things go a little bit colder perhaps by the middle of the month, but that is quite speculative. We'll see what the shorter range models have to say about all of this very shortly. So we're going to start off though by having a look at what's happening in the stratosphere. So this is from the JMA also. This is showing how temperatures are performing at 30 HPA through this season against the average. So the grey line here is the seasonal average for temperatures. It's trend, if you like, for temperatures at 30 HPA in the stratosphere over North Pole. Obviously, we're in a cooling trend of the year now. We are going to bottom out in around a month or so's time, somewhere down there, and then the trend will be to start to lift those temperatures up as we go through the late winter into spring and into the summer. The black line shows how the temperature has been performing at 30 HPA through this season, so starting off very close to average. A little bit cooler than average now at 30 HPA, a little bit underneath that grey line, but not a big deviation. You wouldn't look around and say we've got a desperately cold stratosphere. We certainly had colder stratospheric temperatures at this point of the year. Let's go a little bit higher up to 10 HPA, see what's happening up there. So this is kind of like one of the very top levels of the stratosphere. At 10 HPA we see this. So again, the grey line shows where the trend is through this point of the year, in a cooling trend, of course, made lifting up through the course of this late winter into the spring. The black line shows that actually we are quite a bit colder at 10 HPA compared to average than we are at 30 HPA. So right at the very top of the stratosphere, it is quite cold now. That black line is fairly substantially underneath the grey line. So we do have a pretty cold stratosphere at 10 HPA. Isn't quite as cold as that at 30 HPA. Now, the GFS is forecasting things to develop like this over the next couple of weeks. So this blue area here that we see over the top of the North Pole, that's for cold temperatures at 10 HPA. And I'll just run you through the GFS forecast. So we're looking to infiltrate greens, yellows, possibly oranges and reds if we was to get a southern stratospheric. We're looking to infiltrate those brighter colours into the top of the pole. Now, up to the 1st of December, we keep a pretty cold stratosphere going over the North Pole. If I take you through to a more extended range with the GFS, you'll see we keep those cold stratospheric temperatures going at 10 HPA, but you'll notice those cold temperatures and seemingly the polar vortex are being stretched a little bit there as we go sort of to the 5th, 6th of December. We see the cold temperatures are kind of being stretched on our side of the North Pole a little bit. So that's probably indicating a slight weakening of the polar vortex at that point. At the very end, we are actually, and this is at the 9th of December, so this is right at the very end of the GFS run, we're actually developing quite a warming there over Siberia on the eastern side of the North Pole in the stratosphere. That's not a sudden stratospheric warming at that point because it doesn't get to a very high level of temperature. But for so early in the season, 9th of December, that is quite a significant warming of the stratosphere that the GFS is showing there in the extended range. That's quite a significant warming that's trying to infiltrate into the North Pole. The parallel run of the GFS, which kind of like will kind of like be the new version of the GFS operational next year. At the moment, it's being run in parallel, but it's the upgraded version, if you like. But it's also picking up on quite a sustained warming of the stratosphere at 10 HPA around the Siberian side of the North Pole in the extended range. So this is again up to 9th of December. See those yellow colours there gathering on the eastern side of the North Pole. I'd say that's very early to be seeing that. You would normally expect to see those sort of developments happening later in the winter, say end of December, early January. So there's been this idea in some of the model output for quite a while that we might get a sudden stratospheric warming in December, which will be very early and very unusual to get a sudden stratospheric warming in December. And although the GFS isn't going to the level of a sudden stratospheric warming yet, that isn't a sudden stratospheric warming because the temperature isn't going high enough for it to be so. Nevertheless, the fact we are already seeing signs of quite significant warming of the stratosphere this early. I mean, this is the first week of December still, so it's very, very early in the winter. To be seeing those sort of signs possibly is hinting that later in December, let's say around mid-December or maybe around Christmas, we might actually get some sort of sudden stratospheric warming going. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on that, see how it develops over the next few weeks. Now, Arctic Oscillation and North Atlantic Oscillation charts looking like this. So the black line tells where we've been with the AO, and the red line's at the end where GFS ensembles forecasting Arctic Oscillation to go. Just wanted to throw this in because it's a little bit at odds, actually, this, with this idea that we're going to turn things a lot milder, wetter and windier through the first week of December. So, again, black line shows where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation, been in a very positive phase. We're negative, though, with the AO now. That's associated with the blocking that we have in the northern latitudes at the moment, which is at least partly bringing us the cold conditions that we've got right now. We're going to go even more negative with the AO in the next few days. That's 1st of December just there. And you see there's a real split going on in the GFS ensembles. In fact, most ensemble members are keeping the Arctic Oscillation very negative through this first week to 10 days of December. There are a few ensemble members that are lifting the AO into more positive territory. But to be honest, there are far more GFS ensemble members that are keeping the Arctic Oscillation negative, and maybe very, very negative indeed. Some of these are going down to kind of like -5, -4, -5 on the scale. So that's a very negative Arctic Oscillation indeed, which would indicate that northern blocking is likely to continue through the first week of December. Now, we're going to go into a milder and more unsettled phase through the first week of December. That looks pretty much pretty likely now. But it looks as though blocking is not going to be going far away from the pole. Anyway, we're not a true breakdown of northern blocking, and so it may not take very long at all to find ourselves going back colder again. Although there's no particular sign within the model output, I will show you that in a moment. There's no particular sign within the model output at the moment that we're going to go colder through the first week to 10 days of December. With the Arctic Oscillation looking as negative as that, it's an indication that blocking is likely to be continuing over the North Pole to some degree. And it may be that we're going to go back into colder conditions quite quickly, and more quickly than a lot of the model output is thinking, perhaps. NAO is looking like this, very similar. Again, the black line shows where we've been, with the NAO, red lines at the end, where GFS ensembles forecasting the NAO to go. We are negative with the NAO right now. We're going to go even more negative over the next few days. Then after that, through the first week or so of December, we see again this split. So some of the GFS ensemble members are going into a positive period of the NAO, but several of them are keeping things negative, and some of them really very negative indeed. So it looks like it's rather uncertain, more uncertain than you will probably think, just looking at the model output that I'm going to show you. I think we will go into a more westerly phase and a more Atlantic-driven phase through the first few days of December, but how long this is going to be able to sustain itself, I'm not entirely sure. The GFS ensembles themselves are looking like this, but temperature and precipitation, looking at Liverpool today. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Liverpool, starting off quite close to average at the moment with those upper air temperatures, going a bit colder actually over weekend as we pick up more of an easterly wind. And then next week, we're seemingly getting ourselves into a bit of a zonal sine wave, actually. So we've got warmer and cooler and warmer periods going on, associated through next week with an increase in precipitation. So we're definitely going to go into a more unsettled phase next week. It's going to turn wetter, it's going to turn windier, and going to turn milder overall as well for the very end of November into the first days of December. Late on, we find that in the extended range with the GFS ensembles, so we've got a split really again. We've got several ensemble members that are quite mild, but we've got several ensemble members down here that are quite cold. I think we can see a little bit of a drying trend beginning to emerge there as we come towards the end of the first week of December and go into the start of the second week of December. Have got a little bit of a drying trend, I think, beginning to appear. So all of this stuff, end of November, opening days of December, looks mild, wet and windy, associated with a lift up in the temperature. But where we're going beyond that, let's say beyond the 5th of December, where we go beyond the 5th of December is, I think, quite uncertain right now, just how long this unsettled weather can keep going for. Temperature anomalies looking like that from the 23rd of November to the 1st of December. Generally just a little bit above average, actually. That's particularly for England and Wales. So definitely going into a milder period, but also a more unsettled period. So precipitation anomaly from the 23rd of November to the 1st of December is average to possibly a little bit wetter than average. That's how the GFS is looking for Monday. Still high pressure in control there, blocking to our north. So we're still bringing in this pretty cold easterly wind. It's going to be a chilling start to next week, to say the least. But by the time we go through to Tuesday and Wednesday, that high pressure is breaking down, allowing low pressure to come in from the Atlantic. So this is the milder, wet and windier stuff for the end of the month, turning wet and windy Tuesday to Wednesday, and then the second half of next week goes into an unsettled spell. This is Friday the 30th of November, low pressures to the north of Scotland, bringing in showers and pretty cool temperatures as well. To the start of December, we try and build up a bit of a ridge already. This is 2nd of December, we are trying to build up some ridging from the south and the east. High pressure's trying to get itself back in the ascendancy again. It is up against this low pressure that's out in the Atlantic, south of Greenland, and so actually we've got these milder southwest winds. But it is interesting that as early as the 2nd of December, we're already trying to build high pressure back up to our east. We get to day 10, a little bit beyond day 10. Again, the hints are there that high pressure is trying to build through this first week of December. Doesn't really come to anything. That's how we finish up at the end of the GFS run. High pressure just out to the west of the country, bringing down a rather cooler northwesterly flow at that point, but no northern blocking, so no real Arctic or Siberian cold at this point. But it is an indication that already by that point we are back under high pressure conditions generally. So any unsettled weather that gets going for the end of November and the start of December probably not going to last too long. The GEM looks like that. So again, we've got those easterly winds coming in on Monday, giving us a cold start to the coming week. Tuesday is the changeover day. Tuesday, Wednesday turns wet and windy into the second half of next week, increasingly unsettled with low pressure to the west of the country, bringing showers along with spells of rain. That's how we look at day 10, which is Monday the 3rd of December. Again, we're trying to get that ridge building once more over Scandinavia. We've also got this ridge down to the south of us. Low pressure is out here, so a little bit of a battle starting to get going at this point with the jet doing something a bit like that. Again, just hints that by day 10, or as early as day 10, high pressure is already trying to get back into control. And then the ECM has those easterly winds on Monday, and they continue into Tuesday as well, so cold start to the coming week. Wednesday's a day when it all breaks down, as this low pressure moves in off the Atlantic, turning things milder, wetter and windier as we move through to the very end of November. We're into that westerly flow. In the extended range with the ECM up to day 10, that's how we're looking, still unsettled at day 10. With low pressure out to the northwest, high pressure away to the east, so we're bringing in the flow from off the Atlantic. Not a particularly mild flow. The air is coming out of the North Atlantic and southern Greenland into the UK, rather like that. So it's showery, yes, but it's rather cool actually, and probably even cold enough for a little wintry stuff over Northern high ground. Before we go, let's just see how the ECMWF ensembles are looking at day 10. As I say, day 10 is going to be the 3rd of December. So these are all the various options that are on the table for day 10 with the ECMWF ensembles. It's around 51, I think, ensemble members within the ECM ensemble. So we have got at day 10, 14, which is 27.5% of the ECM ensembles looking like this. Low pressure is out to the west country. This is from the Icelandic Met Office, by the way, but I don't think it's very easy to find a tool on the Icelandic website. So we've got low pressure out to the west, high pressure is to the south, southeast, and we bring in with these 14 ensemble members a westerly wind, which is a relatively mild wind. Quite unsettled too. Then there's a further 13 ensemble members that have low pressure again to west of the country in a slightly different position, a little bit further southwards. Again, these are generally fairly mildish and also quite unsettled as well, although they do have some blocking away to the far north, but not close enough to us to keep us out of that Atlantic flow. Another 10 ensemble members look like that, with low pressure out to the west of the country and high pressure up to the northeast. Much more dominant over Scandinavia, but ridging down into Central Europe. So these ones have us in that sort of flow, more of a southerly flow, I think, with those ones. Probably quite mild, not as unsettled as that option and that option, but still rather dominated by the Atlantic. High pressure is menacing, it's lurking to our northeast. Then there's a further 7 ensemble members, which is going to be 13.7%, that look like this. High pressure really strong with these ones to our northeast. A proper Scandinavian high there, bringing easterly winds towards the country, although they do have this low pressure out in the Atlantic as well. So these are battleground solutions, these 7. With low pressure out to the west, high pressure way to the east. You can get any type of weather with that. You might get heavy rain. Possibly, if the air is cold enough, being brought in from the east, you wouldn't rule out for some snow. And then finally, we've got another 7, which again is 13.7% of the ECM ensembles with low pressure out to the west. And then these ones have high pressure generally to the south, but also to the east. So they're a milder and drier solution with the wind coming in rather like that. So overall, I think the ECM ensembles up to day 10 are indicating that the Atlantic is going to be the driving factor. We'd like to have low pressure in control in line with what the operational run is showing, although a minority of ECM ensemble members favour the chance of some high pressure either to the south, southeast, or possibly to the northeast. Then we can actually go out a little bit further with the ECM ensembles to 360 hours, which is kind of like a couple of weeks away. These are the scenarios that are on the table then for the 8th of December at 360 hours. So we've got 43.1% of ECM ensemble members that by this point, by the end of the first week of December, has high pressure blocking to the north. Look at that. Very, very interesting. High pressure is blocking to the north. A mid-Atlantic ridge extends down through there. And there's a trough of low pressure way to the east. So much colder there. They'd be much colder with those 22 ECM ensemble members bringing the wind back in from a northerly direction. There's another 16 that look like that, just has a weak area of high pressure away to the northwest and a ridge down to our south. And so these are drier but milder with wind coming in from off the Atlantic. And then, very interesting, there's another 13, which is 25.5% of the ECM ensembles that develops this Scandinavian high. Look at this. We've got high pressure to the north of the UK from Scandinavia and going into Iceland. Those ones would put us into easterly winds. Those would be easterly winds being brought in by the end of the first week of December. Now, if you combine the 22 ensemble members here that have blocking around Greenland and to the north of Greenland, so have blocking and wind in from the north, if you combine those with these 13 that have the Scandinavian high, then actually the ECM ensembles are really favouring going back into drier but also much colder conditions potentially as early as the first week of as early as the end of the first week of December, with either northerly or easterly winds possibly on the table there for the end of the first week of December. Will be very interesting to see how that plays out. It's probably in line as well with what we were talking about at the start of the video with the AO and the North and the NAO. Both of those indexes look like they're keen generally, I think, to keep things quite on the negative side, which is an indication that blocking probably doesn't go very far away. And although we are going to go into this milder, wetter more Atlantic-driven phase of weather for the final days of November and the very start of December, how long that's going to go on for, how long it's going to be able to keep going for, I'm really very unsure right now. And the ECM ensembles, I think, are telling us that this episode of milder, more Atlantic-driven weather is probably going to be quite short-lived, and we could well find ourselves going back into cold weather even in the first half of December. It's not impossible we could. So it'll be a case of watch your space and we'll see what happens. Right, so that's your two videos for today. Really busy weekend of updates coming up this weekend. I was supposed to tell you about those at the end of January Friday, but I forgot. So sorry about that. I'll just go through all of the weekend updates for you now then. So the first video up tomorrow will be the third and final seasonal model roundup for winter 2018-19. We get something like 13 long-range models together and see what they're all showing for the very last time for the winter of 2018-19. That's the first video up tomorrow at 10 AM. We'll also have the weekend forecast tomorrow. We'll have a look at weather next week to 10 days with the GFS, the GM and the ECM, and I'll try and fit in a Christmas update for you as well. That'll be the 10th Christmas update. Sunday, it's the 13th and final winter update. So we're coming to an end with all of the winter stuff ahead of winter forecast, which will be released a week on Sunday. So 13th and final winter update on Sunday, and hopefully I'll be able to do an ensembles watch on Sunday evening as well. So a big weekend of updates. Do keep checking back for more. First video up tomorrow will be that third and final seasonal model roundup for winter 2018-19. I've already recorded it. It's a very interesting update. I'll say no more than that, and I'll see you at 10 AM tomorrow. I think you'll enjoy it. Right, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.